Anything electronic, anything that needs magnets or sensors, such as your phone or your car or your washing machine, they need rare earth elements in small amounts but for critical components. And China just held the entire US economy hostage over these rare earths. Here's exactly how they did it. On April 4th, China's Ministry of Commerce dropped a bombshell. Ooh, economic. The Asian Titan is where around 90% of rare earth minerals refinement takes place. Without refinement, you can't actually use the rare earth elements. It's a costly process, it's a dirty process environmentally, and China has scaled up their refinement to a level unmatched by the rest of the world combined. 85% of the whole world's rare earth minerals, or 90%, they take place in China, and the rest of the world make up that last 15 to 20% of refinement. It's quite insane. When Trump started trade wars with the rest of the world, China was in his crosshairs. I was going to do crosshairs somehow. I was like, I'm like, never mind. In his crosshairs, there you go. And then when he backed off and gave every other country a 90-day pause on tariffs, by the way, we'll talk more about tariffs because that 90-day deadline is coming up, July, I think, 7th or July 9th. When he gave those countries, every other country, a pause on tariffs, likely because he was advised, someone whispered in his ear that doing everything all at once to all countries would actually cripple US supply chains and isolate the country in a way that's going to completely cripple businesses. And Trump is America first, if nothing else. So, for the benefit of his country, he paused those tariffs. But even then, China was singled out. China had huge tariffs left imposed on them. You probably remember there were talks of 100% tariffs, 180% tariffs, 234% tariffs at some point, which basically is like an embargo. It's like an economic blockade because nothing with 230% extra fees charged is going to come into the country, really. That's not good business sense. No company is going to be able to operate properly. Now, Trump made it clear that he expected Xi Jinping to come begging to him for tariff rates to be lowered. But in a stunning show of strength and defiance, China said no. Instead, they imposed economic pressure of their own in retaliation. Right? They declared a whole range of rare earth elements that China refines and exports would now require special export licenses issued by the Chinese state. But here's the kicker. Every single shipment needed individual approval, with companies forced to disclose exactly how they were going to use the rare earth materials, sometimes including sensitive intellectual property, because that, is part of how they use it. They had to give the game away on their business, right? Which meant slowdowns or complete restrictions as companies weren't willing to give that detail, right? Within weeks, the impact was brutal. Ford, as an example that I came across as the most notable, Ford, the car-making company in America, in Chicago, an American industrial city, shut down one of their entire production lines for Ford SUVs for one whole week due to rare earth element shortages coming in from China. They weren't coming in. They can't make the specific components needed in their SUVs. They said, we have to stop building cars. That's incredible. That's insane. Factories operate, if possible, 24/7 to be able to maximize their profits and output. Shutting it down for a whole week when, there's planned engineering works that mean as little time offline as possible. There's a whole department in industry. There's whole teams set up in companies designed to limit the amount of downtime in a factory. Repair, engineering works, modifications, improvement works in the factory, on the factory floor. You want to take hours if possible, a day if absolutely needed. 7 days shut down because of supply chain issues. A nightmare for a business. US car manufacturers, US tech giants, defense contractors, they watched their supply chains collapse or stumble badly as China approved only 1/4 of the export licenses needed by American companies. The licensing process became deliberately opaque. You can't see it clearly, right? Like a glass in a bathroom. You can't see through it properly. With some Chinese provinces at a local level rejecting applications on flimsy procedural grounds, while others sat on request for months at a time and wouldn't be addressed. It depends on the province in China you were working with, but the whole setup was this sort of painful bureaucratic nightmare for companies that previously just smoothly got the rare earth element exports that they needed. This wasn't a total ban by China. It was something far more sinister. Bureaucratic strangulation. China proved they could strangle Western industry without firing a single shot, using paperwork as their weapon. The American government had to step in, as their wealthy companies were suffering badly while China seemed to be doing fine. They've got loads of other places they can export these materials, and America doesn't have many other places where they can import from. And America's doing the sanctioning on the world stage. They're not the ones being sanctioned on the world stage, so they can't do stuff like Russia and China and Iran, which is or North Korea, which is use shadow fleets or indirect supply chain mechanisms to acquire the resources even under sanctions. They have no experience of that. So American companies will just sort of floundering like a fish out of water. Trump had overestimated American industry flexibility and underestimated Chinese industrial resilience and preparedness for tariffs. China had prepared for fresh tariffs because Trump had tried what China saw as nonsense during his first term as president. So now that he's back, China's had 4 years to be ready. The Chinese state basically said to his companies, be ready. State-owned enterprises and private enterprises, they said, be ready, because Trump's going to pull some madness again if he comes back in. Here he is. He tried to pull some madness. China was prepared. Now, just 2 days ago, Trump says that America and China have struck a deal, a portion of the trade war between the two great powers that seems to have been given up on by the American side. And of course, China doesn't want a trade war, so they're good. America would relax export restrictions for things China wants, namely tech restrictions, would be lifted. We'll cover them in more detail in a future post. And in exchange, China would be cutting up some of the bureaucratic red tape that they themselves had put in place to cause America pain. Rare earth export licenses, chief amongst them. So America's hope was that would fix the supply chain issues in their country. Now, China essentially here proved that America understands only one language: strength. And Iran, earlier, as I said, if you've seen my videos on the Israel-Iran conflict, they proved that America also understands only one language: strength. So whether it's in defense or military or in conflict, or whether it's in economic pressure, strength against America seems to yield better results than compliance and trying to work collaboratively without actually being in a position of strength, trying to compromise or make the American administration see sense according to you. That doesn't work. Chuck that in the bin, right? The world watched as America backed down on their own economic impositions, what many see as economic bullying. They had to back down in the face of a titan state that was not afraid of punching back. For the unbiased news and analysis without the Western spin, I'm Mahfouz, and I'll see you on the next one.